All right, let's jump in. Austin, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Molly.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have this chat. We were just, kind of before we hit record, you were saying you're excited to talk about this particular topic because it's a lot has happened within your business and now you're kind of getting to reflect on it a little bit, which is
That's a good word to use, reflection. We've been going through this transition for a while, and it'll be good to get some of these thoughts out. So I'm excited for it.
I love it. Well, for those listeners who don't have the privilege of knowing you, can you give us just a quick rundown of who you are, what you do, and where you're from?
Yeah, I'm Austin Ilsley. My wife, Lacie, and I own AI Painting Plus in Columbia, Missouri, college town right smack dab between Kansas City and St. Louis. So we're about 2 hours from like a major metro area. We do primarily residential repaints, but we have been getting into the commercial world with new commercial as well as commercial repaints and a lot of HOA institutional painting as well. So let's see, we have one in-house team that consists of four painters. One of them we're actually transitioning into management, another project manager right now.
Oh, that's exciting.
But then we have anywhere from 6 to 8 sub crews going at any time. This year we're going to do about 2.6 million, 2.5, 2.6 is our goal. So leadership team consists of my wife and I, Cam, our project manager, Angela, she's our new operations and finance manager, and Jacqueline, our sales and client development relationship builder extraordinaire.
Yes. We've had her on here before. She
she,
came to talk about her prospecting. She's
yeah,
fantastic.
she is great, and that is her element. So, and then James he's transitioning into our leadership team, training to be a project manager right now. So
Awesome. You got some good folks on the team.
we do. I told them not too long ago, like this feels like a very solid leadership team. I feel like we have one of the most solid teams we've ever had. Something
That's
we can really
huge.
build a foundation off of, So
Yeah.
something to be
Does
very thankful for.
and when you think about that, does that take a level of stress off your shoulders? Like how does it let you sleep better at night? Like what does that do for you as an owner?
Yeah, I mean, ownership sometimes is a lonely place. Sometimes you feel like you're on
Yeah.
an island, but when you have a really good team around you, that burden is not only bared by you and the weight is distributed, and you're going to drop balls. I drop balls all the time. Other people drop balls, but there's always someone there to pick it up. And nothing is ever as bad as it would have been if it was just you dealing with it. So
Really good. Also, Brian always likes to remind us that nothing is as bad as it seems. Like
that's
in the
so true.
moment, like a news of something can feel, especially within the business can feel like catastrophic, but you're like, okay, you need some perspective on it sometimes and a moment to take a deep breath and how are we going to approach this versus the emotional reaction to a weight hitting.
I find a lot
Um,
of truth in that. Yeah.
we first got introduced to you through Mission Vacation years ago with the APC team, which is kind of cool just in terms of how we first started working with you guys. I think that must have been, was that like
It's like
2020,
2019, I think.
2019? Yeah,
Yeah, but it's been a long journey since it. Gosh, feels like a lifetime ago.
it does. It really, really does. In that time, I mean, how has your role in the business changed? What role do you play now? I mean, you got this management team, this leadership team. What is your role in the day to day?
Yeah, that is an ongoing mystery for me personally. So,
Okay.
but I find a lot of satisfaction in it. That the best way I can describe my role is I'm competent in a lot of areas, every area of the business to some degree. No expert in any of it by any means, but it also that makes me a valuable resource to jump in and help wherever
100%.
it's needed. And I
Yep.
think I'm leaning into that and not really trying to define my role as I am this. This is my responsibility. I like to be more of an overall assistant. I just want to be useful and serve our team as best I can in whatever area that is needed. So yeah, because I have been trying to identify that really, and
Hmm.
as I find myself being useful in every area, I find it less and less important for me to really lock down what to call myself. I guess you'd say.
I think that's huge, though. You're not so you're not stuck on needing to identify yourself as the this or the that. You started this business, you've grown it to where it was today. With great people. You and Lacie have clearly hired smart folks who fit their functions really well, and I think that's Kevin Nolan always says I like to hire people who are smarter than me in different functions because it makes the business stronger
Mhm.
and it allows you also to have your hands involved in what makes you happy.
It's so true. And yep. And what makes me happy is being helpful,
Yeah.
and just being a part of the team that can be relied on if the need comes up. So
Yep. I think it's a cool place for you to be in. And I appreciate the vulnerability in sharing that it's an ongoing journey to kind of find out what your next kind of iteration is with this business.
yeah, I really just got tired of banging my head against the wall, figuring out what I was, and I just had to kind of give up and say, look, I'm a little bit of everything, and I'm okay with that.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, no one wants to bang their head against the wall year after year. That's no fun. This is a really cool conversation because this kicks off the first of a 3-part series. And I'm going to thank Colin for recommending this. He brought this idea to the table, but it's looking at how different painting companies are kind of rethinking their organizational models. And so this is the kind of the first one of a transition that you all have gone through. And we're going to have kind of 2 other conversations with 2 other companies that are going through similar organizational shifts, just in different ways, in a sense. Sure. You guys have made the shift from having an all W-2 field employee team to all subs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
With the exception of maybe one small,
right?
That you mentioned, that one small in-house team.
Yep.
When did you make this shift happen? And how long was the buildup for this transition?
Well, that is a great question. So ultimately, our hand was kind of forced in making the decision. In 2024, there was a bit of a fire in the house. So we got very growth focused on filling out the names in the spreadsheet to get our feet on the street up, get our job. How many job leaders do we need? How many, field employees do we need? Crews, XYZ. We had one sub crew at that time that we were just kind of using to fill in, a few spots here and there, not really relying on them much, but they were great. Mm-hmm. There's a long story with that, but we'll save that. So at that time, I think we had 18 to 20 W-2 employees. What we found is that we rushed a lot of those people into the positions that we had them in, particularly in leadership, and they just didn't have the competency to really fulfill that role. And it caused some financial issues, and we didn't realize it until maybe halfway through the second quarter, maybe right at the end of the first quarter. That there was a fire in the house and we had to do something quick because we lost about $200,000 between Q3 of 23 and Q1 of 24. And, for a business at that time, that was probably just shy of 2 million.
That's substantial.
That's a lot to try to eat. And then we found that all that money that we lost showed up on our balance sheet and credit cards, and and then just we had a pile of debt to deal with. So we couldn't keep repainting all the houses that our teams were not painting correctly. So we had to get rid of a lot of people. We just had to really we did a values matrix for all of our key players who exemplified our values, who didn't. We cut over half of our team at that point. The only logical thing to do to make up for that loss in revenue and cover our overhead was to lean into the sub model. Luckily, we had built a relationship with a good sub that had the opportunity to hire more people, get their business off the ground, and we started leaning into that more. And then that just kind of snowballed because we saw the benefits almost immediately as far as the scalability, the amount of possibilities to achieve goals with less oversight and less overhead. I guess we can get into that, as we progress through the conversation. Yeah. That's ultimately how it happened. We didn't have a choice. Either we were going to go under or we had to make a quick, drastic change. And this was the most logical step.
So when you look back at the team that you had, half of who you had to let go, do you look back at that being, if you could redo it differently? Obviously the sub model has worked for you guys now, and that's the right model for this business. But if you were to look back, would you redo the hiring process different? Was it training? What can you put your finger on, what was it about that crew of in-house team that you had built up that just wasn't able to make this work?
Yeah, it ultimately, and this is a tough thing to say, but it ultimately came down to Lacie and I's leadership style and putting too much of our emotional weight into people that we trusted to build, these teams and these programs, the training programs, and everyone was great people, but they weren't the greatest people for the jobs we put them in. And that was on us for not taking the time to really wait for the right fit, So that's what I would do differently is really diagnose, is this person good for this? Just because they're a great painter, XYZ, be more specific about what we're hiring them or what we're promoting them into, that kind of stuff.
I can only imagine that there's a lot of people listening to this that this hits home in a sense. I mean, it's the lesson that you guys had to learn or the challenge you guys had to go through is unfortunately one that I think a lot of leaders have to go through. I mean, again, you're building a company, you're growing, you are, needing to place leaders in seats, and they're great people.
Yeah.
And it's hard. So it's also hard to let great people go who you like personally, but who can't fulfill the function.
Mhm.
And that's part of, gosh, the complexities of managing and hiring, people in general, right?
Yep. 100% people are people. And if you try to control them, you're always going to be sadly disappointed with
Yeah.
whatever expectations are that you have set for them. Because they're unique. They're individuals, I think the one other thing I really want to touch on, though, is the culture that we were promoting and creating was really expensive for W-2
Mhm.
employees. We wanted to be the industry avant-garde thought leader in the industry that's going to find a way to be able to provide the benefits and the insurance for the employees and the retirement plans and give them all the PTO and trying to make a small painting company comparable to someone who has a job at like our local university or something like that. And
Yeah.
that just, it drained us financially. We just could not afford that kind of overhead. And then that became the expectation, obviously in the field. So now our culture's set and we can't really go back as we were slowly bleeding out. And if we were to go back, the result probably would have been the same. We took away all those benefits. The same people we let go probably would have saw themselves out anyways.
It's tough though, because that the providing of those benefits and the providing of those cultural things are great, are important. That you ultimately are you only see two people who care about people in your team, and so you want to be able to provide those things, but it can't be at the expense of the full company going underwater.
That's exactly it. There's no company. There's no
Right. It doesn't matter at all. The benefits don't matter at all if the company ceases to exist. Now, so when you made this shift and you let half the field go and you moved into the sub world, it sounded like it was a band-aid. Like you were looking to fix the financial kind of situation. It was maybe a temporary shift in the model, but it's then something that you clearly saw benefits from and opportunity and have continued to scale into. Was there any point, whether, internally with leadership or, talking to your coach, where it was like, are we doing this? Are we leaning all into this model? Or did it just kind of happen just naturally?
Yeah, that's been the ongoing debate up until about a few months ago.
Interesting. Okay.
Like we were back and forth leadership wise. Everyone had their own opinions. Lacie and I specifically, like how we want to go about this. Obviously, we know we want to have a hybrid model of some sort with W-2 and sub model, but to what extent? I was on the fence of like, I want to go all subs. I'm really enjoying this. I see the benefits. Lacie had an opinion of, well, there's a control aspect that we can't really, deny is there with W-2
Right.
employees, and there are opportunities. So we grappled with it back and forth until this year we finally said, like, this is the direction we're going to go. And this is, how, and that could change still too. Like,
Yeah.
it's evolving all the time. So, but there was it was an ongoing struggle to try to get to a place where we were comfortable with this model.
Yeah, because it's a major shift from how you've been operating for the last 10, 12, 13 plus years.
That's it. That's most of it right there is we were afraid of the change. We were afraid
Yeah.
of that drastic change and leaning completely into something that was so unfamiliar.
When you did your 2026 budget, did you create it with the intention of we're leaning sub model most of the way here?
Yep, we did.
Okay.
We had that at the forefront. So
That's good. There was deliberate budget creation made around this.
Yeah.
You leaned into a decision, which is important.
Yep, we've had to revise it though. We've had to, because we did lean in, like when we created the budget, we accounted for having more W-2 employees. We definitely did. But as the years progressed, it just hasn't panned out that way. And now we're finally like, okay, we're just going to put that aside. Like we're going to really lean into this sub model. But now we're in another transition period with different opportunities that keep coming up. So I guess we can get in. We can talk about all this stuff. This is all the thoughts that I'm talking about that I haven't really been able to, speak on, that I've just kind of been mulling over. But
Well, I think it's so interesting because, a lot of people maybe start the business one way or the other. I mean, in the discussions to come, I'm going to be talking to ACP Painting in Phoenix area, where they have fully leaned into a hybrid model
yeah,
and kind of the dynamics of that. And then talking to South Edge Painting in South Carolina, that's gone from sub to W-2. But what's important here is that there's no wrong answer in all of this. And I think a lot of it depends on where you are regionally. Like a lot of places make one direction versus another a lot simpler or more complex. Kind of what's the market that you serve, what's the type of work that you do, and it can take time to figure out what exactly works for your business.
absolutely. Above all, like laws are to be considered.
Yes.
Regulations. I know a lot of companies out west that I've spoken with, it's impossible to use a sub model just because acquiring contractor licenses and everything else is so difficult that it's really the barrier to entry is much different than here in Missouri, where anyone can get a business license and get a truck and a paintbrush and start a painting business.
Right.
Not that easy in like Nevada. So
I know Colorado is very sub heavy. We have a handful of clients that we work with there that pretty much all of them have a sub model. But then you're right. You look at California, you look at, Washington State, a lot of them are W2. And it really comes down to kind of what are the regulations of the state and the kind of the territory that you work in. So your area is pretty sub friendly then, it sounds like.
yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started my business as a sub.
Oh,
In
interesting. Okay.
2013, when I started the business, I didn't have a clientele built up. I didn't have a reputation, so I subbed jobs from the other painting companies in town, and it was very easy. I had a pickup truck. I got some insurance, some baseline insurance, and started painting stuff for other people. And that has not changed. The ability to do that. So
What was the feedback or the reception of making this shift, either with, some of the W2 employees that you did not let go of? So you still, you still have a couple of them. You maybe had more at the time that the shift happened, but what was their kind of thoughts on it? What was, other, leadership thoughts on it? I'm thinking about, Jacqueline or, field supervisors, field production managers. Was there concern about the change? Was there anticipation?
absolutely. I guess I'll start with the field teams.
Yeah.
When they showed up for a company meeting and half of the company was not there, they did see the writing on the wall. I think it did put a little perspective, on the situation in their eyes, to see that we're still functioning and half of us are here, and that there is this whole other department, I guess, of labor that they're unfamiliar with that is really keeping this company afloat. Some of them saw it as, like a humbling moment, but others did see it as like they've been devalued. And
That's tough.
I think that's normal, though. I think
Yeah.
that's a very normal thing to feel. But that attitude with the ones that did feel devalued, Lacie and I may not have done the greatest job of like communicating what was going on and why it was going on and this and that. So, there could have been a little more light shed on the situation. But a lot of those did end up seeing themselves out because I guess their importance in the company was part of the reason why they felt, or that was part of their value. They saw the immediate importance. And again, that culture that we had was still there, that culture of praise, that culture of, we need you so bad because of this. And I think it might have built up a little bit of ego to an extent to where when that was damaged, this company was less important to them. That's just me being brutally honest of what I think happened. But from the management side, everyone was very apprehensive because we lost control. We lost control of, I need this crew to be here at this time. And I can tell this customer every little thing that's being done in their house to build trust. From the sales perspective, our team's going to do X, Y, Z in our prep process, and you can expect this stuff to happen. Well, we can't dictate that with a sub. They're going to do things their own way. They're going to use their own materials. So the way that we were able to control the situation and get the customer in the palm of our hand, and that all changed. And that was uncomfortable for everyone. And it's taken a little time to get used to. But there are ways around it. We found that it just comes with thinking about things differently. You mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast, and that's something that I put a lot of value in, is just the ability to think differently about things. Nothing is set in stone. Whatever truth that we find about anything, and as far as this industry goes, is someone's doing it differently and it's working, and we have to be okay with being a little philosophical about it and trying to question the way we do it. And so we found ways around it, and we've still been able to maintain the trust. So, but it was scary. It all comes down to that lack of control, though, that we lost.
That I feel like that's one of the main reasons people are so apprehensive about making that change, is the lack of control, the potential, weakness to the reputation, because they're not your employees anymore. What are some of the things that you guys have done to really continue to build that trust with your customers?
Yep. And that alludes to the bigger point, is that it's not that we actually lost control. We just had to figure out a different way to gain that control.
You just shifted where that control was.
Yep.
Yes.
We still have that control now. And instead of putting the value into Miss Jones, here's everything you need to know about how the crew's going to do it. Here's their names. Here's the products they're going to use. There's the way. Turns out they don't really care about that much for the most part. What it's done is, instead of putting more emphasis on our team in the house being the ones to gain the control, it's put it on the management, and that's fine. It's the project manager that builds the trust. We don't give out certain time, like we give a vague time, like they're going to be here this morning between this time and this time. If the cable guy, back when there was cable, I guess, you say, I'm going to be there between 8 and 5 on this day. You never know when they're coming. Like, it's okay for us to say we're going to be there between 8 and 9 o'clock.
Yeah, they still sometimes say we'll be there between 8 and 12. I'm like, can you give me a smaller window? So between 8 and 9, it seems fair, like seems very acceptable.
Yeah, but we had so much control before that we were able to give them a exact time that when the crew was showing up, and if not, they're late. And people don't expect that though. They're okay with a vague time. You know, some people, there's always ways to work around it. If people have certain needs, I have to be at work and leave at this time. Well, then the project manager shows up at whatever time they need them to, makes that accommodation, stays there until the crew gets there, and then the customer still doesn't have to deal with it. You know, so there's always workarounds. But I guess what that being said, like with the W-2 model, we found that our focus was very much on the team. When we talk about the three-legged stool, you know, team, customer, job.
Yep.
Like our focus was our team because, you know, we focus on the team will take care of everything else. What this has done is really allowed, so I guess we'll talk about the problem with that first. I don't want to get into the weeds too much, but there's so much on my mind when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
The problem with that we found is that the crew would circumvent the chain of commands and come bypass the job leader, bypass the field supervisor, and try to come straight to Lacie or I about personnel issues on the job because they're W-2 employees. And we had that kind of environment, I guess.
Yeah.
But that forced us to have a lot of our focus on that leg of the stool, the team. This, in the sub model, really allows our project managers to only have one direct report from that job. We don't have to know the names of it. We know our people that are on the jobs, but if people are switching in and out of those crews, it's not our business. We talk to the leader, and it allows them to maintain the focus as managers on the customer. I talk to one leader. I don't have to worry about XYZ person on your crew not showing up on time because that's totally your job, built-in accountability, you as the sub. Now I get to focus on the customer. And it's actually allowed us to have a little bit more control because now the manager has the ability to really control the customer as opposed to the job leader, I guess, who is, I would say, typically less skilled in that kind of stuff than a project manager, you know?
Of course. Yeah. So you're leaning into developing, you know, more skilled kind of project leaders who are kind of focused on, you know, that one particular relationship versus the cascading training of a job leader, which, you know, the more job leaders you have trying to manage employees and customers, yeah, there's definitely problems that can arise. So it's really placing the emphasis on what your production, you know, manager does and the importance that they play in maintaining the company's reputation.
That's exactly it. And they have the bandwidth to be able to do that more so.
How has it been finding the right subs to work with? Has that been a challenge? Has that been easier than you thought?
Yeah, up until recently, it was really, really easy. We got really lucky, I think, right out of the gate with a couple of good teams that came to us, and we've just been able to build a good relationship. They're part of our team. They're part of our culture. We onboarded them and brought them into our family the same way we would have, you know, W-2 employees. And that's something that was brought to me, you know, by another company, the Kuipers, Maggie Kuiper. She explained, like, just because you're using subs doesn't mean you have to treat them differently. Like, they're still, think of them like your family, think of them like your team. Your culture will be is the same with them. And that's been true. As we've tried to expand now, we've ran into some difficulty. We have a lot of sub crews come to us seeking work and opportunities. But as we've had to really tighten up our onboarding process and our compliance requirements, it's been harder to really find good fits, I guess. Yeah. And that I guess leads into one of the bigger challenges that comes with this.
Yeah, I mean, you ultimately still have standards for how you want your company represented in the work that you do, you know, in that work that's being done by these subs, and you have to find subs who are willing to meet and kind of stay course with those standards.
And they are there. They're definitely there, and we onboard them. Gosh, we've onboarded new subs this year. One at least 2 crews, I think. And
nice.
Something that has come with that, though, is like we have to be able to sacrifice a little bit of margin. First of all, we have to charge the most in our area to be able to pay the most to the subs to be able to attract more, if that makes sense. And that comes with sacrificing some margin at you know, at industry standard. If 50% gross profit, we got to be okay with a 45 or a 40, you know, and as long as our the money left over in the end is there, like we're saving some of that with not paying benefits and not paying, you know, for a lot of the costs that come with W-2 employees. Right. So it all goes to our bottom line. But if we look at like upfront cost of goods, like we got to expect to pay a little more.
Yeah, it's going to look different than a company of your kind of same structure with a full W-2 model.
Yeah, and I guess that's the same with a W-2 crew. Like to attract good people, you got to pay well.
You do?
So it's nothing really different there, I guess.
It's expensive to do business really either way.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
Have you seen a challenge? I mean, as a result of, needing to kind of meet these margins and raising prices, has sales suffered at all in terms of selling at these higher prices? Or, I mean, you've got a great sales team, so they're just making it work.
Depending on the time of year
Fair.
and who you're asking, I might give you a different answer. This time of year, typically sales are pretty good. Jacqueline's about to hit her all-time sales stretch goal ever.
Nice.
So,
well done, Jacqueline.
That's a lot of her own doing. That is her self-generated leads and that kind of stuff, and her relationship building. But, in the wintertime where everything's slow, a lot of these smaller companies that, some of them may actually be subs for us, it just gets a bit cutthroat and competitive out there. And it's hard for us to sell at the margins that we need to sell at. As those companies get booked up in the spring and the summer, we're the ones that are answering the phones. We're the ones that have availability, and it's easier for us to sell. So
Yeah.
it's it's circumstantial, I guess. But ultimately,
Yeah, I mean, it's a seasonal business. So,
Yeah.
I think that's to be expected. Of the subs that you work with, do you ever come across, I think about scheduling challenges, and they're a sub for you, which means they can also be a sub for another company. Do you ever come across challenges where you want this sub crew on this job, but they're booked elsewhere? And how do you work around that?
Yeah, we've just kind of started running into that. I guess like I said, we got lucky. I think, with our first subs that we've onboarded, like we were able to feed them enough work to keep them busy enough to where,
They wanted to work for
they
you
want to
guys.
work for us. We want to treat them well enough to where we are their first choice. And when we have jobs, they do our jobs. And
Okay.
that's what we have. That's the goal, right? That's what the ultimate goal is I feel like when talking about transitioning to a sub model, that's the kind of control that you want to have is to have that sub at your disposal whenever you need them. And that comes with fair treatment, fair pay, plenty of work. What we found at onboarding new subs and trying to get subs that are currently working, like with other companies, it's a little bit harder when they have something good going for them and we're trying to, attract them to us.
Yeah.
And we do run into some scheduling issues, but for the most part, we can work around that, and we're very aware of that. When scheduling, that's something we had to get over because we're used to saying, all right, we're making this schedule and this sub crew's on this job, this one, this one. With these new few subs we can't do that. We have to check, hey, I have this job available. Are you available this week? Are you available this week? The idea, hopefully, though, is as they keep saying yes, and as we keep hopefully making them happy, they will start to say, yes, keep feeding us. But we have had a couple instances where communication was a bit difficult and subs weren't transparent with us about, yes, they would tell us they would show up at the job a certain day. Turns out they were working for another job for another company that may have went over on schedule, blah, blah, blah. That's when we kind of just say, call it quits if we're not going to be open about this right now. Like, this is not our values. We need to just cut it right here.
I was going to ask, have you had to cut any sub relationships just because it wasn't a good values fit?
Yep. And in true AI painting fashion, we love to give second chances and third chances. Getting to the point, though, where we're having to make some tough cuts here soon,
Yeah.
though. So
how do you determine, at least when you're considering bringing on a new sub team, how do you determine their values? Like what's your kind of, whether it's part of your onboarding process or like an interview process, what do they need to do to get approval by your team?
Trust. That's bottom line. It's an unspoken value of ours, I guess. But when it comes to a sub model and really leaning in and being a part of our team, it comes down to trust. And violations of that trust consist of not being transparent with us when it comes to what you got going on outside of our world.
Yeah.
And that's where the lines get crossed. We're really okay with, like, I know a sub crew has good values. For one, when they show up, when we have a meeting, when we have a job walkthrough, hey, we have this job scheduled for you. We're going to go meet the client at 3:30 this afternoon, and you're going to see the job and plan for your team and blah, blah, blah. The same way we would do with a W-2 crew. Well, if they don't show up, because that's not a normal thing, apparently, for a lot of companies that they work with, they just show up and do the work and then leave. That's not how we roll. It's different for them. They don't show up to the walkthrough. That's strike one. Okay. If that keeps happening, then you can't build trust that way. And it puts a lot of stress on the job or the project manager to try to cover for them. With the customer, it just comes that they have to be transparent too. Like, hey, we got a crew that was just they failed us and we failed you. Sorry. Like, and that's a hard thing to do. And if we have to do that too many times, it's just not going to be a good fit. I
think, and customers, I think, appreciate the authentic, response to you're not trying to cover anything. We had a crew that just didn't work out. We're really sorry. We're gonna make this right. It leads me to, with customers in general, did you have to, or do you change any of your messaging, in terms of the teams that you work with, or like we've made this shift, or is it more so just down to you've just made more of that relationship focus on with the project manager, and it's not necessarily, you're not kind of highlighting the fact that it's a sub crew. It's more about the project manager.
Yeah, it's we're definitely not highlighting the crew. Sometimes I don't know. It really depends on the crew. Just like employees would be like you have to know your teams that you're putting in people's houses, and that comes with repetition and using them. But we don't really emphasize the things we used to. We don't give them a pamphlet and say this is who's going to be in your house to build trust. We're
Yeah.
not gonna, and we don't give them a set timeline. Like all we can really say is we can get to you a month out here. We're sometime mid next month. As we get closer, we nail down the start date. Okay, then kind of like we were talking about, we can't give you an exact time the crew's going to show up. If there's an exact time you need us to be there, then you like yeah, just let us know and we can make accommodations.
Hmm.
But we don't put emphasis on the who is going to be in your house
Okay.
outside of the project. The project manager is always going to be there at the walkthrough with us up.
Okay.
So that's that's all the customer really needs to know up front, that we found. And as we build trust with the subs, we give a little more. I don't know. We don't lean into that, but we give credit to the crews that are actually working. Like we have a really amazing crew of ladies that are our best interior crew that we have
Nice.
for interior repaints, and their sub crew, and like they've just been so good to us that like we will say like you're gonna love Helen. She's like amazing. Her mom Miriam is in here with her. Like they are our best. You're not even gonna know they're here. They're so quiet. Like once we get that kind of relationship built, we can build up to that. But that's not something we
Yeah.
have to offer as a feature and benefit right out of the gate.
It can be just added parts to the conversation
Yep.
where it's appropriate, kind of where it makes sense, and where the relationship stands with
Yep. And
that.
we're even seeing those names like mentioned in our Google reviews now. Names of people in
Cool.
sub crews, and
That's great.
always the project manager, and it's always Jacqueline. And now we're starting to see like the actual people doing the painting, which tells you we got a good crew here.
Yeah.
So
The financial part of it all, I mean, we've hit on it a little bit. Obviously, margins are looking a little bit different, but the bottom line is healthy. Do you feel like, with the exception of the loss, the 2000 end of 2023, early 2024, and kind of the loss that kind of instigated this model switch, do you feel like overall this is a healthier financial model for AI painting?
I do. I don't think it's the end all be all model because we are missing out on some opportunities, particularly with like institutional work and prevailing wage work that we just don't have the capacity to do with our small in-house crew. I've heard of people doing it. I'm not really aware how it's done, but it seems that certified payroll would be very difficult to do for a sub crew unless you made them your employees temporarily. So those are opportunities that we're really missing out on right now. So now we're of the mind like maybe we could build up our in-house crews again for these kinds of things, but we have an opportunity to do it very slowly,
Yeah.
methodically is the benefit there. And we're not in a pinch, or we don't have our backs against the wall, to where we have to, like we did before, put people in the wrong positions. We have
Yep.
time to really make good choices here and the right choices.
That feels good,
It
right? I
does.
mean, because you see opportunity, and you see a runway for being able to design that and scale that the way that makes sense for you guys.
Yeah, and I think well, like Rob and Russ and ACP, I think that probably exactly what what their philosophy on it might be too. Like that hybrid model, I do see a lot of value in it,
Yeah.
when you have an evenly split hybrid model. So
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with them. I'm recording with them in the next week here. But that's why I love this series, because we get to look at it from each different perspective, and kind of what makes sense, why the shift,
yeah,
and how are they using the teams differently? How are they using the in-house versus the sub teams on different projects? And that might be something that you ultimately, guys, you maybe do in the future.
hmm
Um,
we were so afraid to use our sub crews at first, like in people's homes and this and that. Like, there's a big, you just kind of got to do it, is what we found, and
take
let
the
the
leap.
problems happen and solve them as they come. Don't try to prevent them. You're preventing yourself from valuable lessons in that case.
Especially when you're needing to dig out of a debt hole that
Yeah,
you're like, something's got to change here, and you guys clearly you acted upon it.
yeah. Well, that's something I wanted to mention. Net profit wise, we're going to have a record year. It's the volume that we're able to do now, as opposed to with a W-2 model. But
Okay.
we sacrifice the margins on gross profit, but because of the volume we're doing, we're going to do more. We're going to make more money
I
than
mean, net profit at the end of the day is,
that's what it's all
is
about,
more
right?
important. That's what it's all about. Obviously the KPIs, the gross profit, it matters, but
Mhm.
it matters more if your net profit is not healthy.
Yep.
And if you guys are able to kind of just balance that P&L sheet in a way where it's working, and you're able then to reinvest in your company, that's huge.
Just comes to thinking about things differently.
Yeah. Has this changed anything leadership wise for how you and Lacie lead this business? Like,
That's a good question. Yeah, I think so. I think so because we are also able to put our focus. We're still very people oriented,
yep.
but now we're able to focus on a smaller group of people that are in our direct reporting realm that we're able to really put the care in that we wanted to give everyone, put the opportunities in front of, when we talked about building a place of that people can grow in, like it makes more sense to me now focusing on a small group of managers than growing the painting portion of things. I've found, and this is just our experience, lately the data shows itself. We have more people approaching us of sub crews, like needing work, than we have employees or people looking for a painting job. That was just a key indicator, like this is the direction we have to go then. I mean,
Yeah. I honestly think that speaks to your location, and
could be, yeah.
that just Missouri being a very sub friendly state, and the barrier to entry being lower, it just being kind of more the model that other companies utilize. Like I don't see that as much here, at least in the Philadelphia market. I mean, obviously sub companies exist and hybrid companies, but it's not as heavy as what I think, or as friendly as maybe Missouri is. And that leads me to, was there anything that surprised you, or anything that you learned just from a regulatory standpoint about the sub process through kind of transitioning to this model?
Yeah, I guess insurance requirements were a big thing, really dialing in like the impact that kind of has as far as the coverages of your subs. And personally, like from a personal standpoint, I've also learned it's more of like it's an ability to step back and really relinquish control and be okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's something that I have learned through this process that I wasn't able to really do when I had, 20 employees that were under my direct control and looking to me as as the person that is going to solve the problems.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the way it's supposed to be, and it's not supposed to be designed that way. And a lot of companies are really good about making that not the case but I wasn't. And it's a lot easier for me to not put that weight on myself when I'm
Yep.
working with sub.
Yeah. The problems are going right to your production manager, and your phone's not ringing off the hook of Austin, help me solve this problem
Yep.
anymore, which that's important. I mean, part of the goal in any scaling business is how do we get you out of that, being the go-to person for all the things. And this model has been a big part, maybe allowing that to happen.
100%. No silver bullet. Like this is not a silver bullet to all of the
Yeah.
problems, but it's been a benefit for my problems.
Which is good. And ultimately that's where you got to focus. At the end of the day, this is about your world and what's going to make you happy and make you and Lacie and the rest of your leadership team want to continue to show up every day and do the work that you do. Otherwise it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's hard to
Yeah.
see that when you're in
Yeah.
the fog of the hourglass sometimes.
Yes. And you got kids, you want to spend time with them too. I mean, it's being able to find that balance per se. And I think balance is tricky because it's never going to ever be perfectly aligned. But I think that there are times of your life where you balance your time one way versus the other. And this maybe gives you more opportunity to spend more time in the way that you want to spend the time, which is important.
I can see it like I will look back someday and may have regrets on how I spent my time, but I will never have regrets about how I spend time with my family and my kids. And that's
huge.
Yeah. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So.
Yeah. If that's, you can be proud to say that. I mean, that you can feel good about life in that when you can look back and not have regrets about that kind of that aspect. Anything you would like, as we bring this to a close here, anything you'd want whether it's a business owner here or a GM or just a listener who's considering making a transition, whether it is to subs or just a transition in general, what advice would you give to them?
I guess tread lightly. Unless something's absolutely just not working like it was for us, don't make drastic changes. I think there's a lot to be said about dipping your toes into this world and learning some hard lessons on a small scale if you're able to. And otherwise, other than that, just mind your laws.
Mind your laws.
Yeah, don't break the law.
I mean, that's the perfect way to end. Yeah, don't break the law. Run your business right and don't break the law. Austin, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you kind of bringing us into your world. And again, kind of getting just being authentic and vulnerable about just the lessons learned, the things you maybe would have done differently, but also kind of the opportunities that it's kind of changed for your team. I always say until next time, whether it's you or we get Lacie or somebody else from the team, but I've enjoyed having kind of the AI voices on this podcast. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Molly. It was a pleasure, really.
Awesome. Well, until next time.